First off, I'd like to introduce Blood. This is my brother, Sam Cato Luda Muller, to the show, along with his partner, Dennis Doughboy Lewis, and your regulars, Law, LJ Johnson in the house, along with Smokey Garrett. Okay, so on tap for today, we got several different topics that we want to touch on. One is going to be de-escalation of police. So we're going to kick this thing off and bring in our guest panelists. If you guys have anything you want to say as far as an introduction, feel free to let our Facebook family know who you are and what you do and what you're going to bring to the table today.
Sure, I'll kick it off. So Samuel Muller, younger brother of Sam Jackson, originally from Jacksonville, Florida. I'm in Arizona currently due to work, so been out here since 2013, and love the group. Like, glad my brother invited me to the group. I've seen some really interesting and riveting discussions. I have some topics on hand that definitely want to discuss and questions want to be asked, just to get a true perspective of the atmosphere, the actions that were taken, right or wrong, and kind of what's the mindset, as an officer when you're in these particular situations, and what we can do as civilians to ensure like we put ourselves in the best situation as possible. And then I invited my boy, Dennis, AKA Doe. So I'll let him kick it off too.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Born in New York.
Facebook at?
Someone had a question about Facebook.
No.
Born in New York, raised mostly in Hawaii and Arizona. My raised single mother raised me and my younger brother. She's a retired military Army Desert Storm vet, as well as retired from the Youngstown Police Department as her second career. So I have a few family members that were in law enforcement or in the military. And, but yet, some of these discussions and things like that I have with them, it really brings up some interesting feelings. As we kick things off, I'm very interested in learning from everybody. So.
Okay. So, one of the topics that you guys wanted to talk about was de-escalation. De-escalation is a new terminology. We've been policing the same way for decades, but we keep trying to reinvent the wheel, put a new spin on it. De-escalation ain't nothing more than basically building a rapport with somebody and trying to calm them down and get them to voluntarily comply. It's nothing more than that. But because we deal with a lot of people that are pretty hyped up, they're angry, they're frustrated, they got a whole range of emotion. So we have to come in, with that calmness, and we have to identify this person, kind of be a little bit proactive, but we have to identify where this person is emotionally. And then we have to build a rapport with them to try to get them to calm down and get on the same page we're on. So that's what de-escalation is. Anybody else from the panel want to add to that?
I'll just throw out de-escalation. A lot of, I guess, how you achieve it is understanding your role, understanding your position as far as a law enforcement officer, also understanding your authority. I don't have to come in as a big bad guy when I already know I'm the big bad guy. So if people hollering and screaming or whatever's going on, or we in a situation where I'm trying to get somebody to calm down, I can't achieve that by hollering, yelling, and screaming too, because that's just gonna raise them up. There's a time for that, but I would say when you say de-escalation, I guess it would be more appropriate if I understand the scenario that you're speaking of as what you're trying to de-escalate, because certain scenarios, you just showing up in uniform, there is no way to de-escalate. And then certain scenarios, showing up in uniform, you're the best person to de-escalate. So it really would depend on what's going on.
So I guess when I think about it, it's the situations where we've seen, I would say, numerous times, whether someone's being pulled over, whether they're just recently, we had the video of the man getting shot with the rubber bullets in front of his wife and children. In a situation where you're being pulled over, you don't maybe feel safe. They're giving you instructions to grab this or grab that, and you're like, I ain't grabbing nothing. Because I've seen too many instances where you reach to get that wallet, you get that registration, maybe even your cell phone, and you get popped. Now he's yelling in your ear to barking instructions. You're saying, I'm not doing anything. And there's not, cool heads aren't prevailing. I've heard to where, you say, hey, record everything, but recording something means I need to reach for something. And you already got an officer that may be coming into the situation with some preconceived notions of who you are, maybe the car you driving, maybe you got some rims on it, they thinking one thing, you don't know what the mind state, how their day been going, what they just got out of. And so when I say de-escalate situations, perfect situation, yeah, a cop comes up, you discuss the situation, right or wrong, you try to come to a solution or resolution, whatever that may be. But more times than not, we're not in those situations when we get pulled over. Sometimes you're alone, you got 2 to 3 officers there that are one at each the passenger side, the driver's side, one behind the car, and it's 3-on-1, it's 2-on-1, sometimes it's more than that. And if somebody that's sitting in the car or somebody that maybe gets stopped, I'm thinking, okay, I ain't doing nothing. I ain't trying to move. So how do you de-escalate that when you don't want to take any action that could be perceived as a sudden jerk or a knee-jerk reaction or not complying or whatever, to give them the opportunity to grab you, manhandle you, however they may see fit?
I'll take the traffic stop one because that's something I'm well versed in. And I will say everybody does that differently. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you are doing it. But what they call unknown risk traffic stops are probably the most dangerous thing a law enforcement officer can do in his career. So that gets drilled in you from day one of law enforcement work. So there are officers that approach that with a heavy hand on the front end when there's no need to. There should always be safety precautions taken from an officer perspective. But if I come to your window and tell you why I stopped you, and then I ask you to start grabbing information, I should expect for you to reach for certain things because I just told you to do that. So what I would do to minimize all of the reaching is I would just ask for a person's driver's license. And so when they're reaching for driver's license, my expectation is they either reach behind them in a pocket or in a center console. At the time that I'm doing this, I take a step back where I can look through the vehicle, but they can't see me anymore. So in order for them to see me, they got to actually turn all the way around to find me. And if you're doing that, I got a chance to look at you and assess whether or not you trying to do me harm. So to answer the de-escalation as far as, understanding people's fears, because I would walk up to people's cars and they would be afraid, rightly so, just based on things that have happened. My job at that point was to calm them down and go, hey, listen, This is a traffic stop for whatever the offense was. Nothing more, nothing less. So nobody's leaving here dead. You gonna get a ticket and you go your way, I go mine. That was, my way of trying to calm the situation, or at least put them at ease. Now, my guard never goes down, but in their mind, the situation is a lot calmer because I just, stated what I stated. That wasn't all the time. I mean, the majority of my encounters with people on the side of the road were fine, but there are some that never accept responsibility for why they got stopped. So, but I'm in charge of that situation, so I don't ever have to lose my cool. You can get as mad at me as you want to. I'm still gonna write the ticket. You're still gonna get it, whether you tear it up, rip it up on the side of the road, which has happened. That doesn't bother me. The facts of what's gonna happen doesn't change. And so I remember the young lady, she got her ticket, ripped it up, tore it up on the sidewalk, and pulled off. And I pulled her over again. And I cited her for littering. So there is no level of anger that a person can have that I have pulled on the side of the road that'll get me out of my peace, because I understand what I have going on, what I got to do. And the moment that I raise or really lower myself to where they are, then I lose control of the situation. And that's how some of the stuff that you end up seeing on video, like the guy, I think we had that posted on the group page, where he turned to the camera and told everybody he was getting ready to beat this dude up, and then he put him in the LVNR. I mean, that's not necessary. It's just not necessary. I could cite several dudes that we, you had to come out the car. He didn't want to come out the car, and it's like, okay, you don't have to come out on your own. We'll get you out. And it was, it was never a case where anybody's yelling, screaming, or stay right where you at. We'll just pepper spray the whole car. You'll come out. You'll get out eventually.
It's
I'd like to interject some.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'd like to inject a couple of experiences I've had. I've done patrol, and I've done like traffic stops, that LJ said, and I've also went to domestics, which you have a whole nother. You got people's tempers blazed, and everybody's hiding, screaming, yelling at people. The worst thing an officer can do is go in there screaming and yelling, because you have nowhere. You already came in high, so there's nowhere you can go. And I'm not a loud person. I'm a soft-spoken person, so I'd start whispering, and they look at me and they bring their voices down, because they're like, "What is he saying?" So then they bring them down. Another thing I would do is take the loudest mouth and put them in timeout. Take them away from everybody else. Tell them, hey, you're not under arrest, you're just being detained right now, cool off, and then I go back. And that generally de-escalates anybody gives that person the time to cool off and think about what they've done and what the consequences could possibly done, especially when can possibly be, especially when it's in the back to the police car. Another thing I've done is been to had a crowd, officers screaming, hollering for help. Get there, there's a crowd of people, and I'm gonna go to the next extreme. I go to the trunk of my car, take out that 12-gauge shotgun and rack it. The sound of that shotgun being racked, kind of got everybody's attention. They quiet down. So with different levels of escalation. I've had people much bigger than me, like maybe a 250-pound, 2% body fat person, get there, domestic. His partner's got her eye almost hanging out the socket. I know he's got to go to jail, but if I try to tussle with him, I'm probably gonna lose. So I'll rationalize with him, say, look, man, it's three sides to every story, your side, her side, the truth. I want to hear both sides. So let me get you, have a seat in my car from me. I pat him down, put him in my car, tell him to say policy or officer safety, whatever, put him in the back of the car. From there, I know he's going to jail, but I don't have to tell him he's going. I've rationalized with him. And then, I've talked to him in language that he understands, hey, yeah, he wants to get my side. He wants to get all sides, and he's going to give me a chance to talk. And that's the thing that a lot of people don't, I've seen a lot of officers, they don't give a person the opportunity to explain themselves. Even if they're in the wrong, let them talk. I let people, I live by the code of, you can have the last word, but I'm gonna have last action. And that's worked a lot for me.
So in these instances where you've each explained your approach, can you kind of explain the mindset of what you're seeing that's not taking place? Like the officer that's yelling in front of in the video saying, yeah, I'm gonna drag you out the car, or these instances where it seems like it goes from 0 to 100 in an instance. Like, I know you're not those officers, but can you kind of explain what are they thinking in that particular situation? Like,
I can tell you what they're not thinking, and what they're not thinking is they don't see the people on the other side of that equation as themselves. Therefore, they're more inclined to do things or treat people differently than a treatment they would want for themselves or for their family members. So the reason I don't get out of my rest because somebody's hollering, yelling, and screaming because they get a ticket is whatever caused the ticket, you caused it, not me. So I can see my family members getting citations because it has happened. But what I can't see is me going from 0 to 60 on somebody because they're angry with me, upset with me because they're getting a citation, and choking them out just because. I mean, that's another human being I'm looking at. So I would say maybe they just don't see that person as an equal, because when you do, there's certain things you don't do to people that you see, that you can see yourself in, or brother, sister, cousin, aunt, mom, dad. It doesn't matter. You just it's just a certain way you don't treat people. Certainly don't talk to people a certain way when you hold a professional position.
I'm a give an example of my evolution as an officer. You know, I think this is what a lot of officers go through. I think so. My partners can give some perspective on if I'm right, if I'm wrong. But this is my evolution. One, when you come on the police department young, let's be honest, we all have that I'm the police mentality. You know, I think we all have it, and we all trying to pump our chest. We the big bad wolf. We all have it. And that's not even a matter of race. We just young, and we got this authority and this power, and it has to be tempered, and it becomes tempered over time. I've gotten my complaints, and I've gotten discipline, and I learned as I grew as an officer, and so I started to change, but that's the young officer. So you guys as civilians when you see that officer approach, you got this kind of like, observe that officer and say, what kind of officer am I dealing with? If he looks like young and a rookie and he coming up there flexing, you might have to say, this guy might be pissing vinegar. Then later in my career, like I said, I evolved a little bit because I got tired of the complaints. I got tired of being disciplined, and I started to grow and mature. And so I started to understand, like Law said, these are people also, and they need to be dealt with a little bit of respect. However, with that, there come another side of me as I became that veteran officer. I'm talking now, I've had 15 years on, and I've heard the same lies. You got to understand, when an officer approaches most citizens, that we automatically expect them to lie, to try to get out of it. And we already know the answer before we ask. So I became very jaded in my career. I started to look for the worst in people. And that was just another level that I went to in my career as a veteran officer that I had to be aware of, that I didn't want to become so jaded that I didn't give people a chance, that I judged them prematurely. But for the most part, I was right, but I was wrong. But it was a preventive measure on my part where I had to say, hey, if I don't start kind of judging these people, giving them the benefit of the doubt, they could hurt me. So I had to be one step ahead of them. So I did look at people as expecting them to lie, expecting them to run, expecting them to fight, expecting the worst out of them. Then again, in my twilight years, now I grew up to another level. Now I'm trying to get closer to Jesus. I'm trying to be a better person. And I knew that I needed to change. So there was this evolution that I went through as an officer. So the balancing act is sometimes you got to realize what type of officer you dealing with. And as LJ say all the time before we leave these meetings is you got to make sure that you make it home alive after a police encounter, because he's on edge, you's on edge, everybody's on edge.
I mean, that's
crazy
to think of. That's crazy to think about, though. Like, I gotta make it home. Like, to me, that's insane. Like, that shouldn't have to be my thought. Like,
the police thinking that same thing too now. So it's a two-way street.
Right. You right, and I'm not naive to. I understand it's a difficult and it's a dangerous job. I 100% agree with that. Get that.
Well, more than that, with the scenario you gave, a traffic stop is the most dangerous thing. An unknown risk traffic stop is the most dangerous thing that a police officer would do. So, add on the fact that it's a dangerous job, but now I'm doing the most dangerous thing.
Yeah, here's I think if everybody read the Facebook group, they know I've been pulled over a few times here.
52.
Yes, and that is no exaggeration. That is no exaggeration. So the one time that kind of got under my skin, my daughter, me, my wife, and my daughter was she must have been maybe 4 months old. It's summertime, Arizona, 100 something, 300 degrees outside. And so we're literally just taking as new parents, we're literally just taking a drive. A drive, we were on a major road. I was going, maybe about 5 or 6 miles over the speed limit. Speed limit was 40. I was maybe doing 45, 46. Sure enough, noticed, officer behind me, 2 cars behind me. Then next thing you know, then he's right behind me. And so I decided, well, you know what, let me turn down another major road, because he was coming at me and I could tell. And so he pulls me over, comes up to the car. What are you doing? Literally, and just taking a ride with my family, sir. My daughter's in her car seat in the back, and she had a fever at the time. And, my wife's standing right here too. She's like, yep. And so the cop was asked me for my, information, gave him everything. So he went, ran me. And then he came back, and I asked him if I could please step out the car so I don't have my windows down because my daughter has a fever. It's 100-something degrees outside. At first he hesitated. I was like, look, my daughter has a fever. I explained. And then so he let me step out the car. And as I stepped out the car, he started to hand me back my information. And he goes, hey, your windows are kind of, your tint's kind of dark there. And I was like, yep, just like I said in the post. I was like, well, sir, I have an exemption for that. He was like, I never heard of that. I was like, it's a window tint exemption from the Arizona Department of Transportation. And he goes, that doesn't exist. And I was like, sir, I have the paper in my glove box if you would allow my wife to get it and for, we can retrieve it from her. And then he literally, we had that same round and round at least 4 times. I don't believe you. I don't believe you. I don't, and I'm like, I have the paper. And I was like, look, I'm getting the paper, and yeah, he was that young officer, his chest was all up and, and everything. And so finally, I just said, look, I'm getting the paper. I walked around to the passenger side. My wife handed me the paper and he looks at it and he, I've never seen this before, and I was like, I don't know what to tell you. It's like, I really don't know what to tell you. I've never seen a mermaid before. I've never seen so many things before, but I don't know what to tell you. And so he got mad. He literally got mad, and he he almost threw the paper back at me. He kind of, you know, just let it go out of his hand, and I kind of caught it. And he proceeded to walk around my vehicle looking for something wrong. And I had maybe about a 2-3 inch crack on the passenger side, top side of my windshield. And then so he goes, "Oh, your windshield's cracked. I'll be right back." And so he wrote me a ticket for the windshield. 2 months later, about a month later, was the court date. Because I mean, you know, my windshield had just got cracked earlier that week. It was a weekend. My insurance, I have free windshield replacement, you know, through my Progressive insurance, and they were busy on the week. And normally, you park your car at work, safe light comes, replace your windshield while you're working. That's how I roll. So about a month later was the court date because I wasn't paying that ticket. The judge literally got with the officer. Why are you wasting the court's time? Why this? Why that? Etc. I mean, the judge got with the officer. You know, the judge asked me key questions like, you know, did you explain that, you know, your windshield was recently cracked and you were just waiting for an appointment? Yeah. And so the judge got with him. You know, totally. You know, officer. You know, it's examples like these that are clogging up the court system, and you know, for him to reevaluate his approach, and you know, and I felt vindicated. It felt good, honestly. And me and that officer proceeded to ride the elevator down at the same time as I told my wife on the phone what happened. So you know, that felt really good. but you know, but it turned to the point where I had to de-escalate the officer because he didn't believe, you know, about my tent or this or that, and then he tried to find something else wrong, you know, and yeah, I mean, a cracked windshield, I mean, you know, I mean, it wasn't obstructing my view. It's on the passenger side at the top of the, you know, of the car, and you know, but that was, see, that's one of my experiences.
That particular experience, you dealt with a jerk. I mean, there's no 55 ways about that. You dealt with a jerk. I think one of the things, and I failed to mention this, one of the things that helped me, I started my law enforcement career, I was 20 years old working in the jail. And one of the things that helped me deal with people and deal with authority is being locked into a dorm with 48 guys and you by yourself. So although you're the authority figure, you're not really in charge. Because if at any point they decide to not do whatever it is you say do, it's 48 of them versus me. So I had to learn very early on how to deal with people in a way that I need you to do what it is I need you to do under the authority of me wearing this badge. So when I came out on the street, it wasn't difficult for me to treat people with respect because I had to treat people with respect when it was 48-1. And you should do that regardless, but it's just, that was a training ground for me. And I think I would have been a different type of officer if I hadn't had that experience. When you know, like I said, you're in a dorm with 48 dudes locked up for whatever it is they're locked up for, and it's just you. You got to be creative in how you deal with it because everybody is in that group that's different.
Well, if I could have encountered more citizens like you, Dennis, you know, my career would have went a whole lot smoother. But unfortunately, we dealing with the worst of the worst.
Exactly.
And
yep.
A lot of times, an officer's response is based on that citizen's initial reaction. And a lot of times, and Law can attest to this, a lot of times the first thing they gonna say, and we expect it, why you stop me? You know, so automatically we can become defensive because it's like, I wouldn't have stopped you for no reason most times. But from a civilian's perspective, we're starting to see more and more that officers are stopping people for knick-knack, you know, small stuff. And then it's escalating. So we're starting to see that. And I think that's what we're dealing with now at this moment in this climate, is we trying to bring everything back to balance. You know, we're asking for law enforcement to review the way they do business. We're asking for citizens to understand and meet us halfway, because a lot of citizens, they're out of control as well, and we got to manage those behaviors. You know,
yeah, that's true.
It's a balancing act.
Yeah, and you know, in that story that I just told, you know, that officer never told me why he pulled me over. Never. You know, to this day, I have no reason, you know, for him pulling me over, besides that, you know, well, I don't even want to speculate. You know, he was a Mexican guy, a Mexican officer. You know, so yeah, I mean, it's you know, like I said, it's that conditioning to where, you know, for myself is that, you know, like I have been getting set up, you know, and I know that one day when I'm running late for work, or, you know, whatever the case may be, maybe I'm running late to pick up my wife, and damn, here I go, I got pulled over again. And I know one day I'm gonna be that guy. You know, I know I'm gonna be that guy. I've been conditioned to be that guy, you know, and that's the sad part about it. You know, my mom talks me down, wife talks me down, you know, and Cato even witnessed it. You know, one time, you know, we were out and about, you know, partying with our buddies that came in from out of town. And, you know, this place had probably, what, 200-300 people, Cato, at a Jack in the Box, and then we got singled out. And you know, they had to kind of, you know, hey, be quiet, you know, come on, let's go, you know, because I'm being conditioned that way due to my experiences. You know, it's the other end of the spectrum. You know, an officer goes through 100 calls, and 90 of them are ridiculous, crazy, and, you know, life-threatening, and the worst situations possible. You know, and I can understand how an officer could be conditioned, but a citizen could be conditioned as well. You know, and you know, that's my biggest thing is that, you know, just based on my experiences, you know, why I'm 41 years old. You know, I make, you know, very good money. I have a family. I don't have I don't have a record. I drive a nice car. And why does, when I see a police officer behind me and you know, at the light across from me, you know, whatever, why is it when I see a police officer, my heart skips for a moment, and I got to think, oh my God, did I pay my insurance? You know, did I this, did I that? You know, I got to check myself every time just by the visual of a police officer, you know, and you know, and that's how I've been conditioned.
But you're not by yourself. And the thing about 2020, the things that you've been going through it's been going on for the longest. But we have social media, we have access to video cameras now, and everybody's just seeing what's been going on. It's bringing awareness. I remember in 96 or 97. Remember, I had a Mitsubishi Diamante. I had some nice rims on it. I used to get stopped. I was the police, and I used to get stopped all the time, for, like you said, for practically no reason at all. You know, once I got the reason was, they said I drove over the line once. This is in broad daylight. You know, I was a police officer 23 years, but I've been black for 58 years. And just being straight up and honest, there's a thing, driving while black, profiling. Especially back in the 90s, it was known drug dealers had nice cars. And my car looked like a drug dealer car, but a typical drug dealer car. So, you know, and it just came into it. And I tell people, and I go by what I tell people, don't hold court on the side of the road. The worst thing you could do is try to go back and forth with an officer, because you're gonna lose that battle. And we used to have a saying, you might beat the case, but you won't beat the ride. So that's one of the things, and like I think Sam wanted to, I think Sam brought it up. He was 20 when he came on. Law said he had worked in the jail, but I had experiences. I had worked in the maximum security prison at the time. I was 19 for about a year and a half. I was in the military, so when I came on, I was 30 years old. So I pretty much had dealt with people. I was also in the retail business before. That was my first job. So I was used to dealing with people. So it came naturally to me. But in training and in working around a lot of younger guys, you have officers coming in at 21, 23, the medium age, between 22 and 27, I'll say. They have no life experiences. A lot of the officers have never had any socialization with any people of the, of opposite skin color, opposite culture. So they're gonna come out, a different way of what they saw on TV or what they heard, other veteran officers talk about the good old days, so-called, So I had this one guy. He used to be he worked in as a bouncer once, and he came on the police department, and he was full of piss and vinegar, wanted to bust heads and everything, and drug dealers gonna sell drugs. It's a thing you either catch one or you don't catch it. So we went to this known house, had a problem, had some complaints or whatever. Anyway, he went in the house with another officer. They came out, had this guy jacked up, threw him in the back of my police car, and he goes back and forth, screaming, yelling at this cat in the back. This officer's yelling at this guy in the back of the police car, and this officer actually licked the window of the police car, taunting the guy in the back seat. I immediately put him in timeout, made him go stand on the side, and I took him to the station. The rest of that day he sat, and I think he fell for that day. But that just shows some of the mentality of some officers that come on for the wrong reasons. They see movies, they want to be that guy. They see the Mel Gibsons and the other type of really badass police, and that's what they want to be.
Bad boys for life.
So, Sam, you mentioned, hold on, I think it was Law. You mentioned that you were, in prison or in the jail with 48 other guys. Sam, you talked about going through stages. You come on and you got your chest poked out, and then you just mentioned that you started, in the military and then transitioned to being, an officer. So those three things seem like there's definitely three different ways that you each came into the job. But I think what it kind of highlighted to me is like hiring. Like, how are some of these officers getting on the force? Like, if you don't have any social skills, never interacted with the people of other ethnicities, you seem to be a little prone to want to, poke your chest out and have your ego. How are they getting in the force? I mean, I don't know what testing. I know the police academy, but there has to be some mental tests, has to be some psychological tests that are being done. Of course, the physical part, which is the easy part to pass, but you still have these officers that are getting recruited onto the force, getting hired onto the force that seem like they don't have the right background to be dealing with people.
Okay. Also, I wanted to add to that. The one thing I did notice is that all three of the gentlemen mentioned about age. So to add to Cato's question, would a age limit of, let's say, 25 years old or something like that benefit? So that way you have more mature people, more mature men and women joining the force, as they go through the hiring process. Okay, I'll back off.
I don't know if y'all read I forget what post it was, but I made a comment about hiring as far as some of the questions that get asked in the interview process.
Yeah. And going off topic.
Not really. The hiring, when they make it to that point, I think they ask so many questions related to police work and law enforcement that they don't really ask questions about how people think. And so you could have people with some of these character flaws, but they can answer the police questions. But like one of the questions I asked, how would an entity that is out of ratio as far as their demographics, how would they fix that problem? Well, a person answering a question like that will give you a peek into how they think. And you can't, it's an open-ended question, so you can run from it. You got to lay down some kind of answer. But that will give you just a small peek into a window of how they think. And you ask a series of questions like that, and then you kind of build a roadmap for what kind of person this is. I'm not, I understand the point of the age thing. I'm not totally in agreement with that because, like I said, I started working in jail when I was 20, and I hit the street, I was 21. That's rare, and it's rare because most people aren't mature enough to handle that load at that age. And myself included, absent for the fact that I spent that time working in jail, learning how to be an authority when I'm in the minority, if that makes sense.
So, Lo, you spoke about the post, and I saw that post. I did read the post, and you were asking about like being able to ask off-topic questions, like they usually ask policy questions and stuff. And
right,
I think Sam commented like they don't know the policy yet, but you know it kind of gives you an idea of maybe how they're thinking. But during that interview process, that hiring process, are those off-topic questions allowed for one? And if they're not, is that something looking to be implemented? Or if they are allowed, are people asking them? Like if
they're not allowed, because and the problem is you have police officers hiring police officers. So police officers think like police officers. So if I'm asking you or talking to you about being a police officer, then I want to know about how you're going to be a police officer. But in reality, human resources people should be asking these questions because they hire people based on some of the things that we just said. How do you think? How do you process information? How do you process data? Because those are things that happen on the street. You got to process stuff, and you got to process it, you know, in rapid succession. So if you can tell me your opinion on Brown versus Board of Education, although it has nothing to do with law enforcement officer, being a law enforcement officer, your ability to tell me that tells me a little bit about who you are. And then that gives me a window of into what kind of person you are, which may also translate to what kind of police officer you are.
Let me say this. One, I don't agree with upping the age to come on as a police officer. I think if you can enter into the military at 18 and go to war for this country, you know, you can do almost any job, you know, especially policing. Two, most of your police officers, we come on young. You know, now I pointed out how I went through my evolution as a police officer once I got hired, but I had the same background as my counterparts. You know, I'm ex-military, so I identify with Richard. I worked in corrections, so I identify with law. So I've taken all those paths, but the common denominator is we were young. And even in your current occupation, you know, there was a day one when you were young and you had to learn how to develop into your occupation. Now we're coming back to leadership once again. You know, when we come on young, we look for the leadership that's in place, the veteran officers, the supervisors, the managers, the administration. We look for them to develop us into the type of police officer that we are destined to be. Now, if they fail us, then, and we already on, we're going to eventually be exposed. But we're going to be the one to tote the bag as for our ineptness. And they get away scot-free because we can't go back and say, well, he didn't train me properly. He didn't develop me properly. But I think that's where the emphasis needs to be put on once again is we need to require and put emphasis on your supervisors and your veteran officers developing these young officers, you know? So I think a lot of times that's where we drop the ball, you know? So you know, so officers, you know, you got a lot of good officers and we're gonna make mistakes, you know? Hopefully a young officer don't make a mistake that is detrimental to his career or law enforcement case cost somebody their life, you know, but good supervision, veteran officers around him, they can see those things. And if they start to address those things with those young officers early in their career, those young officers say, okay, well then I can't continue to do that. But now a lot of veteran officers are just turning a deaf ear. Supervisors are not developing these younger officers, and they just letting them run amok. And I think that's what we're seeing.
I was a training officer, and I remember a lot of officers, trainees that come to me from other officers, and they'll say, I'll start out like they just learn how to spell police that day. I said, look, I'm not trying to, diminish your mental capacity or whatever, but I'm going to start from ground level like you just learned how to spell police today. And we're going to go from ground up. That way we cover everything. But now, the recruits, they would tell me, they would say, well, my last training officer told me to forget everything I learned in the academy. And I've heard that before. And I was actually told that when I was a trainer. But what should be done is to build on what's been taught in the academy instead of forgetting about it. And another thing Sam always brings up is accountability with leadership. A lot of people, they get in with the good old boy system. They got a friend of a friend or a relative or whatever, and they get them through the system. No matter how bad they bomb through training, they make it through somehow. I actually had a person with me that came from a college agency, which is totally different than riding the streets. And this officer, he didn't have it. I've never had anybody that I trained in all the time that did as bad as this guy did. And I wrote on his day reports that he wasn't up to par. So I asked for him to either be rephased or just take out the program. So the training, the supervisor, he ended up riding with the guy, I guess, on his final ride to see if he's going to make it or not. They ended up going to the courthouse, and you had to put your gun in the locker at the courthouse. This guy has an accidental discharge of his firearm when he's putting it in the locker. You think he didn't make it through? No, he made it through. The way I train people is that I had a mentality of, would I be satisfied with this officer riding in the areas where my family lived or where I lived at? If that's the kind of police that he could be, yeah, then I give him a pass. If I didn't feel comfortable with that, I would let him go to somebody else's neighborhood.
I got a question from my viewing audience from Vanessa Lee. She asked, is there a law enforcement test similar to the ASVAB for the military? And what expertise in law enforcement should be best for a person, if any at all? Yeah, we do have a civil service test, which is similar to the ASVAB.
Do they still give that?
That I don't know. Been over 30 years since I had to apply.
I think they stopped doing that because that was ruled discriminatory. Because I think that actual test was used to weed out a lot of black folks. So I think I'm not 100% on that. I have to check that, but I think they got rid of that.
Do they have a written test at all? Some type of written test at all these days?
Well, I think when they got rid of that civil service test is when they redid the hiring academy. Because before it was basic the BLE stuff, and then maybe in the last 5-10 years they went back to agencies hiring you versus you having to go through the college. But I don't know. I have to research that. I know it used to be a civil service test.
What was the civil service test? Like, what was on it, and how was it deemed discriminatory?
Well,
my recollection,
go ahead.
It was just basic information that would kind of gauge how you did from a high school education level. I don't think there was anything out of the box, was there?
I remember it being something like a SAT, but not
exactly.
That's how I remember, which is what the ASVAB is.
Yeah.
What was the other part of that question?
Should there be any expertise in law enforcement? No. What expertise in law enforcement would be best for a person, if any at all? What background?
I think people get the misnomer probably from TV that there's like something special or unique about being in this profession. There are certain skills once you get in specialized units, but if you can deal with people, that's like the majority of police work, dealing with people, and how those interactions go. And when they go good, they go good. When they go bad, I mean, it's bad.
I think the number one criteria is you need to have some moral character. You know, I think that needs to be number one. And that's probably why a lot of officers slip through the cracks, because the pool of candidates that they're choosing from is really, really shrinking. You know, most people can't pass a drug test. They have criminal records. They got psychological issues. So that pool is getting so small, they're really having to go to the bottom of the barrel, you know, for lack of a better word. So if you can come on without a criminal history, you know, that's obvious. You can come on and kind of fake your way through that interview process. And if you ain't got no drugs in your system at that time, you might be able to get. You might be able to get on. I'm just saying, because the pool is so small.
That underscores the point that I was making about the interview questions, because they don't ask probing questions to identify who you are or how you think about just life in general.
Yeah.
They may ask you some police stuff, but I mean, like I can't. The one question I remember from my interview was, "I'm not 21 years old. Why should we put you on the street right now?" And I said, "Well, I can go work in the jail until I turn 21." And the captain at the time, he was like, "Yeah, you're right." And I'm like, "Really? Y'all didn't know that?"
Solving. That was problem solving.
But I mean, it's just, I mean, I don't know. I just think if a human resource manager came up with the questions to ask, of course you have your law enforcement questions in there because that's the position that you interviewing for. But there should be questions in there that just probe your thought process on just basic stuff. Because I think if they did that, you know, they would get an indication that, hey man, this dude might be a little sideways, and that psychological exam is a joke, so that don't count.
But Law, if you're a recruiter or you are HR personnel and you got this government funding to hire, you know, 100 new officers, and you going through your hiring process, and they've also expanded that they are ruling candidates out for traffic offenses, for bad credit, and that's along with the criminal history and the psychological. So when you factor in all that, all these ways that they can be disqualified, and now you say, hey, this guy ain't got no criminal record, he passed the physical agility, and we didn't see no signs that he's a psychological killer, you know, in his psychological test. Like I say, you might be a good candidate, because the stuff that you're saying, the probing questions, they not really concerned about, because the pool of eligible candidates is starting to shrink. And
that's why you end up with dudes reaching inside people's car and grabbing them by their neck and announcing it on camera what they getting ready to do. That's how you end up with them people.
And now we've gone full circle that it's an ugly process, and you know, sometimes they have done what they had to do just to fill those academy classes, you know, And this is the result of it. But let's be honest, these are some of the, in my opinion, these are some of the reasons we're here.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
When you mention the two things, when you mention the pool shrinking, is that because there's the interest in being a police officer is decreasing, or is it strictly because of the qualifications? Like, I need like credit. Like, to me, that's kind of shocking, bad credit. But is it because of the criteria to even just get to that first step?
The bar is high, and it should be, but the amount of people that can clear that bar is just a small amount of people. And so that group of people, you got to determine. I had a qualification to become a police officer, but I also had a qualification to become an engineer. Which one am I going to do? I got the qualifications to become a police officer, or I can be an LPN. I mean, it's just people that decide to do this job, they do it. It has nothing to do with the fringe benefits that come with it. So if you're able to clear that bar and you do this job, it's because you wanted to do it. There are some people that have ulterior motives, but I think that's a small group. So I just don't think you have enough people in that pool that would clear the bar to be a police officer that actually want to be a police officer. They have other career aspirations. The people that decide to do this job have probably in many ways always wanted to do this job. And that was me. I was a police explorer at 14. So police work that was always something I wanted to do.
Hey, Richard.
I'm on the other side of the spectrum. I never thought I'd be a police officer. I never thought of even becoming a police officer. But I was working security on the Navy sub base. Went in Dixie one day in my uniform, and an officer was working off duty. And I think that was during the time they was recruiting minorities. Matter of fact, because I was in the last state police academy class. And he said, "Hey, you ever thought about being a police?" I was like, "No, man." He said, "Man, you get a take-home car. You drive a police car any place but the club or the bar. Say you can work off duty, you can make extra money, get a rent-free apartment." When he said a rent-free apartment, that got my attention. So that's what you feel right there. So I said, "Shoot, I need to sign up." So everything fell into place, and then it's like, I was pretty much molded for that job, but I didn't know it because I was a people person. I had integrity. I'm a preacher's kid, oldest of 10, so I was always responsible. And it just, everything, like I said, everything is found in place, but I never had any aspirations of being a police officer.
But you were already a public servant, though. So yeah. It was an easy transition. And I think that's whatever that it is that's in us, you were already a public servant. So being a public servant in that capacity wasn't no big deal for you.
So bro, I'm going to ask you a question then. Coming out the military, did you want to be a police officer?
No. And I've never shared this story with you, but you're going to be able to understand it. I tell people, I didn't choose it. It chose me. I was never that guy who always said, "Oh, I want to be the police." My hopes was when I got out the military to transition to Atlanta and hopefully be sitting behind a desk in a suit and a tie. I came home to visit my mother and my car broke down. So now I can't get back to Atlanta. And I'm waiting on another check to come in from the military to get my car fixed and I'm gone. But my mom pressured me, "Well, you ain't doing that. You might as well look for a job." I'm like, "Mom, I'm out of here." 2 weeks passed and I am getting bored. So our aunt Altamise, worked for the city, worked in the mayor's office. She said, "Well, give me your application." I was like, "Well, cool." Circulated through the city. My background was in communication. See if they got something in communications. That's what I've been doing. She circulated it to multiple departments. JSO, Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, was the first one to respond. And when I got that card saying, "You've been selected for for hire provisionally for upcoming police class, but in the interim, you can go work in correction until the class starts. I'm like, at a family reunion, and I'm telling my family members, hey, I got this card to be the police, and they were more excited than me. So it got me excited. Now, all of a sudden, oh, I want to do this, because they were excited, you know, they were proud and everything. So I'm like, okay, let's do this. And that was my journey. Wow. So no, I didn't choose it, it chose me. I think I was good at what I did. You know, it was destiny, it was fate. Because I don't see another career path that would have gotten me to where I'm at mentally. You know, financially, yes, I could have done some other things, but mentally, how I developed, I don't think another career would have afforded me
that. Richard, I know you had mentioned.
Let me throw this out real quick, because Jocelyn just made a very good, valid point, and I hadn't even considered this, and it's true. She said the interview questions aren't the problem; the selection of the interviewers are the problem. So maybe the people sitting on the panel that's actually picking who get to be police officers could be another issue.
I have a question, you know, the hiring process, interview questions, you know, the whole 9 yards. But when it comes down to it, you know, it's also about neighborhoods and, you know, selection of, you know, assigned, you know, precinct, station, things like that, especially in bigger cities, you know. Every large city has a, you know, that side of town. You know, the larger cities have the black side, you know, the white side, you know, coming out West Coast. You even have the, you know, the Mexican Latino sides, you know, New York and things like that. So, you know, how does the selection of, you know, you're putting a young man from Kansas that graduated with 52 people from his high school into, you know, Brooklyn, New York, you know, in Bed-Stuy, you know, so like, you know, how does, you know, the selection of precinct and you know, those things happen after the hiring process?
I don't know. I personally, I wasn't from Jacksonville. I just lived there maybe about 9 months before I got hired. But I knew nothing about Jacksonville, and my last training was in the Mandarin area. So they give you what they call a dream sheet, like in the military. You put down where you would like to be assigned to. And I want to go to the north side. I'm from the street. I'm from St. Louis, Illinois. I feel comfortable around my people. I'm like, I want to go on the north side. Everybody kept saying that's the worst side. I said that's where I want to be, and that was it.
The zone commanders, after a recruit class get done, the zone commanders draft. So they throw names on the board and they draft, and they do it based on either who they know or how they perform in FTO. And some of them just blind. They don't know who it are. They're just picking people. So, but that's how they get assigned. At least in Jacksonville, I don't know how they do it in other areas, but in Jacksonville,
I heard one logic was that a lot of young officers, you know, coming into, hitting the street, you know, that they want to get their stripes. You know, they want to, hurry and get their credit, get their stripes, and to maybe go to the bad areas or those parts of town, to get their rest up, to get their whatever have you. And then of course as they mature, then they move to the easier sides or easier sides of town. Is that something that you would consider a real thought?
As far as trying to get promoted, that's a good thing. There are people that have performance standards placed on them that they go out and try to achieve and overachieve, and they could end up stopping somebody like you without a real reason. And then once we got you on the side of the road, find the crack in your windshield and oh, there's my reason. Well, according to the law and the Constitution, you're supposed to have a reason before you get stopped.
Mhm.
So there's some overzealous people that's trying to impress, and that could be self-motivated overzealous, or that could be department related as far as, hey, we need X number of this, X number of that. So there could be many reasons for that.
Mm-hmm.
You can pretty much tell those officers because they a lot of times they're being on working in the north side and supposed to be a high crime area, quote unquote. Those are the ones that stay in the car. You know, they only go handle calls. Other than that, you won't see them. Other time you see them, they're out to eat somewhere or they're out with other officers. But like I said, I enjoyed where I was at, and I was comfortable with the people. I would drive around. I park my car in the projects and just walk around, eat sunflower seeds. You know, people would ask me what I'm looking for. I said, I'm not looking up, I'm chilling with y'all. You know, so it's kind of you can pretty much, if a supervisor is paying attention, he can see who's doing what and gauge their performance and what they need to step up at.
I saw a change over my career that I didn't agree with, but again, I wasn't in a position to affect change. But when I came on, you didn't need college education. All you basically needed was no criminal history and some common sense. Former Sheriff Nat Glover, he was high on education, and he instituted the educational part of it. So what I saw with that change was now you had people coming on that thought they were ultra intelligent. They came when I came on, you know, a young officer aspired to, you know, be a detective. You know, at most, at all he could see, his long-term goal was, I just want to make sergeant. Once they start coming on with the college education, they came on saying, I want to be sheriff. You know, they felt like they were too good for sergeant or for a lieutenant. They felt like they were destined to be an administrator and ultimately become sheriff. This was their mindset. And also they didn't interact with other officers, you know, the veteran officers. They like, well, I don't have anything in common with you. They're laser focused on whatever it takes for me to maneuver through this department is what I'm going to do. And if I got to step on you, and you, that's what I'll do. So they wasn't trying to learn from the veteran officer because they felt like they were smarter. They felt like they had the degree, they had the intelligence. All they saw was black and white. They lacked a lot of the common sense. They lacked a lot of the empathy. They lacked a lot of the courage, or most of them had never been in a fight, had never roamed in minority neighborhoods. So I saw that change, and I thought that this ain't gonna end well. You know, the college education should be an incentive. You know, those who acquire college either bring it on, come on with it, or get it post-career. You know, that should be an incentive. But when they required it, then they took away a lot of good men and women who didn't have a college education but would have been very good officers because they can relate to people. They had common sense. They had moral integrity. They took a vast group of candidates away from that. So I saw it, and I'm like, this ain't gonna end well. But a lot of people do put emphasis on formal education versus a person's heart and common sense.
Well, I can tell you as a training officer, that change that you're talking about from one recruit that I had to one that didn't have a college degree to one that did. And the one that did, I think he's either a chief or an assistant chief right now at the sheriff's office. But I don't know if y'all remember on the DOR, there was a line where you talked about, you know, what they needed to do to correct whatever it was that you were rating them on. And so I remember giving him his DOR that day, and he read and signed it. And he was like, I already know what I need to fix. Now he was a phase 2 recruit at the time, telling me this. And so I just made a mental note. I was like, he's going to be a jerk his entire career. and he'll probably end up being somebody's boss, being a jerk. And right now, he's either a chief or an assistant chief right now.
Wow.
And those are the people that are leading law enforcement and developing, or should I say underdeveloping, the younger officer. These are the ones that we're talking about. Those are the people who is in leadership right now, and they are the ones that are failing us as a community and failing the officers, the young officers, and the veteran officers if they're in a leadership position. So I just keep going back to it. It all starts and ends with effective leadership. I would like to say we've gone over our hour. This has been, to me, a very, very good dialogue. I would like to get you guys back at a later date because your perspective is fresh and is new, and it kept us going. So I would like to invite you guys back. What we like to do as we end is do a round table on ending on something positive that you might want to share. Before we do that, I know I just jumped in there because I try to stay on some type of time frame. Did anybody else want to comment on this last topic that we've been engaged in before we start?
I just want to give an example, like you were saying about the college. That has been it has put a crutch. I think it's taken a lot of good people, knocks them out the box to be able to be a police officer. Because I personally, I'm a high school grad. I don't have a college degree, but I have plenty of common sense and I know how to use it. And it's a lot of times the officers, the supervisors will call me when they had problems or complaints or whatever. They called me around because I had a rapport. I knew how to deal with people. I had a common sense approach, and I knew how to, look at both sides and kind of appease to, come to an agreeable conclusion. Even if somebody had to go to jail, I'd explain to them why they had to go, and then, whether they get out, in 5 minutes or 5 years, it ain't personal, but they have to go by law, so they would understand that. But sometimes people with education, as a college degree, my dad used to say, call them educated fools.
Okay.
I said my piece on this. I mean, I'm okay with, I always felt like it should be tiered. Require a college degree, but don't eliminate those without it. And if you have a degree, you come in at this pay scale. If you don't, you come in at this pay scale, just like with any other profession. And then, like you say, incentivize it. But don't completely eliminate people without it. Just bring them in at a lower pay grade, and like that. They shouldn't have changed that aspect. They should have just added, okay, we prefer people with degrees. If you got a degree, you come in at this number. If you don't have a degree, you come in at this number. Now, you can still come in. You just got to work your butt off to get to where it's worth your while. And I think we'd have been fine with that. I want to say, in some form, they do that now. I don't know if I don't know exactly how it is. I don't know. I try not to think too much about that place.
They supplement it with military.
Okay.
So for every somehow or another, they supplemented that. Hey, if you like college, we'll take military background in lieu of college.
Or police experience in another agency.
Yep.
Something like that.
Yeah. I think they take that as well.
Yeah. Okay.
So.
See, that works. I'm good with that. That's that doesn't knock you out of the box before you even get to sit down and talk to people. But I still would be asking them probing questions though.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, I got one more question, but I think it's going to take us. It ain't a quick one. It was really about the leadership piece. How do you change the leadership piece? If they're already in that position, they're responsible for making that final decision on the hiring. How do you implement change there? I mean, they're going to be there to that pension or that retirement kicks in. You just going to have the same problem, just a repeat cycle.
That's a good.
Bruh.
We might have to table that till Monday. That's a good one.
You have to table that one because you just went,
That's the money right there.
All right, so part 2 Monday. We coming back to that one.
Yeah. So that's a good one, and that to me, that's where it starts and ends. So I'm about it on that one.
Yeah, that'll be a good topic to start with next week.
Okay. Any closing words? Anybody want to say something? End on a positive note.
I got one thing.
Go ahead.
This right here. I can still breathe. I can still talk. I'm not dying. I'm not uncomfortable. Minimally, but it ain't enough to be hurting somebody. Put a mask on. I mean, it's not gonna kill you. It's gonna kill. If you asymptomatic, you could be affecting somebody's grandmother, one of your family members, and you don't want their death to be on your hands because you didn't want to do something as simple as this.
Yep.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to say, I appreciate the opportunity just to have the discussion. Can always talk to my brother, of course, but, to also get a different perspective and more perspective from others that have been in the role. Even though the questions that are being asked are really directed towards those bad officers, but I know it's a dangerous job. So, and I'm born and raised in Jax, so I know how Jacksonville is, Duval County. So, thank you for the service and putting your life on the line, and I'm glad you all still here safe and sound to even be able to have this discussion with you. So.
Yeah, definitely. I echo the same. I've enjoyed the conversation. I'm looking forward to, more, the future conversations. My good news is that I did not get pulled over today.
We've been praying.
So we're not up to 53 yet.
Hey, we've been praying for you, bro.
I'm gonna leave with some two-part things. One is what I always say: read and study the 4th and 5th Amendment and Terry versus Ohio and case law surrounding traffic stops. And the other one is what I said last week: vote and early vote. Don't wait till election day. You're less likely to encounter voter suppression when you vote early.
Yep.
Yeah.
G Money, you got anything?
That's it, man. The mask is.
Okay. I want to end on a tribute to the the Representative John Lewis, who recently passed. I want to say what he would say: get into trouble, get into some good trouble. If you see something, say something. Protest. That's our right to protest if we feel our government is not living up to the promise. So get in trouble. Get in some good trouble. Rest in peace, John Lewis.
Amen.
Peace. Great.
And we're out.
All right.
Are we up?
Yep, we're off.
Okay, cool.
You're still recording on the back end, but we're off live.
Well, I'm about to stop the recording on the back end.